This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Kristie, the travel coach. She's a workation planner and helps teams get the most from their travel experiences and helps you get more from a typical vacation. Kristie, how's it going?
Hey, Vance. Great. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Where are you calling in from today?
Excellent. Yeah, so in an interesting turn of events, we ended up calling our European trip over a little bit earlier than expected. So we're back in the US with our family and friends, just visiting and catching up with everyone there.
Good. And no shame in that. It's so funny when I have people on, they say, yeah, unfortunately, I'm in the US. You know what? That's realistically part of being a nomad too, is that
Absolutely.
sometimes you go home, sometimes you go abroad, you got that flexibility.
Yes, I think one of the big things was, interestingly, the whole point of so I promote remote working and traveling while you work remotely. And I think the interesting thing with remote working is that it gives you such freedom. Like we plan to be in Europe, for example, this year. We were planning to be there till like mid-November, but uh, a close family member was diagnosed with cancer and had surgery, so we needed to come back, and uh, it gave me a chance to do other things while we're here, visiting, spending time with family, other
Hmm.
family and friends and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
that's good
just
that you have the
yeah,
flexibility.
the remote working is really more than just having cool Instagram photos and stuff, right?
Family first. And so we'll back things up a bit. Um, I wanted to start by mentioning kind of how I became aware of you. And that is through your voracious replying on Twitter and engagement. And you've always been one of the best repliers to my tweets. People who listen to the podcast who aren't on Twitter might not get it. I think a lot of people will, that you're always involved, you're always active and part of the conversation and consistent about it too over many months. So I'm very happy we finally got the chance to hear your voice and go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that's so cool. No, I love what you do and the content that you share and the topic. So it's really easy to want to be part of it. So
Thank you. And you kind of label yourself a workation planner. And we've actually never defined that word yet on the podcast. And I'd love to learn more about what a workation is.
yeah, I think it's a little bit of a trendy word, a buzzword maybe. It's kind of like I always think of like Benifer. It's, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, and
Uh-huh.
it's kind of a mashup of the work and vacation. But really, I think what I have come to realize is the opportunity that people have when they can work remotely. Like you can fulfill those travel dreams. You have so much more opportunity to fulfill those dreams of travel if you can work remotely and bring your work with you, right? You're not just stuck to your 2 weeks of vacation time that your boss gives you. Because if you bring your work with you, why not go for like a month instead of just a 1 week vacation to Italy, right? Go live in Tuscany for a month and live and work there. So workations just give you the ability to like explore the world more than you maybe normally would, and
Hmm.
you work your normal business hours, and then when you're not working you're right there to explore. So
Hmm.
that's how I define it, at least.
And it appears that you're one of the main proponents of this concept of the workation that I'm seeing on Twitter, of course, on LinkedIn, and you've even gotten your name in a couple mainstream publications. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah. I mean, I think so when I spent like 20 years in the corporate world. I was like an accounting and finance professional and had that dream of the office with a window. And once I realized that office with a window wasn't that cool and it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought I would it would be, it just occurred to me that if you can like work remotely, why wouldn't you go traveling more places? And so I've basically spent the last 3 years traveling full time and trying to like evangelize that concept. So any opportunity that I get to, kind of open minds or share that is I take that opportunity to do so, to show
Hmm.
people that they can do this too. And it's not the other thing I think that a lot of people don't realize is I think they think that you have to be like in your 20s or something and have like no possessions and then go out and be a digital nomad. But I think what I've come to realize is there's a lot of us maybe a little bit more senior in our career. We could do the same thing and maybe it's just on a part-time basis. And that's where the concept of the workation comes in. Where go for a month and you don't have to sell your house and all your stuff. You just, keep all that, sort that out at home and then go travel.
Yeah, it definitely sounds attractive to the average office worker. If, the boss says, hey, everyone, July is workation month. You guys can go, wherever,
Absolutely.
go do something fun. And so, is the idea that this is something that you are selling to companies and trying to create that sort of company level change and adoption? Or is it specifically for digital nomads that maybe already have that location freedom? Or how do you think about like B2B, B2C?
Yeah. So, uh, all of this in my mind is a work in progress. Like you said, there's not like a lot of people talking about this, which I find kind of odd, I guess, because it seems like obvious. But um, right now, I kind of target. So I have an online community called the Executive Remote Worker,
Hmm.
and they're individuals that come. I basically just created a space for people to come together online, and then we take group workations together. Members of the community will periodically travel. Like we've been to Croatia, we've been to Mexico, we've been to Belize. Um, but I think that I've started with the individual, trying to like evangelize this concept, but I'm super interested in getting into businesses and I could see down the road this being like they have the way they have a vacation policy, they have a workation policy. So I could see this being
Yeah, I see that too.
embedded into companies' employee manuals and stuff.
Tell me more about that because I definitely see a future for that as well.
Yeah, I know some companies are doing that where uh, I think Airbnb, for example, you can go 90 days a year and work from anywhere you want, which is cool because that's kind of their product too, right? It's like in line with their product. But I just think that more companies need in order to stay competitive in the future, they're going to need to address this for their employees. They're going to need to like demonstrate and be a leader in this to really think about the employee and their like well-being. There's so many benefits that you get from like traveling somewhere else and working remotely, right? Like studies show increased productivity, increased creativity, problem solving, just avoiding burnout, having a new, recharging your energy by relocating yourself somewhere new and inspiring, having those taking those hobbies. Like if you were working, I used to work for United Health Group, if you in Minnesota, so if you were a corporate employee there and were really passionate about scuba diving, you're not really gonna have a lot of scuba diving opportunities in Minnesota, right? So but if you could go to Roatan, Honduras, as one of my clients does, it's like he spends 2 weeks there a couple times a year and just scuba dives in between the work that he has to do. And so he's, he's fulfilling that hobby, that passion that he has by relocating himself from Minnesota to, Honduras in this case. But so you can see how the employers that really uh, address that employee mental health or whole wellness, I think
Mhm.
is going to be
Yeah,
huge.
like it'll help with retention.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I personally think your if you want like the if you want to attract and retain top talent as an employer, you need to be offering things like this, because you're going to have because all those top players are going to want to go to companies like that. And so if you want to be relevant, I think it's like really important. And I think the pandemic really showed that to companies when because employees saw that everyone was all offices closed and everyone was forced to work remotely, right?
Mhm.
And so all these millions of people that are the laptop workers know, well, I just spent 2 years working remotely from my laptop, so it works. Why couldn't I, you know and everybody
Right.
talks about all the other benefits even from just working from home.
Yeah, and I think it's a benefit, but it also has some very practical concerns or implications. Listeners might remember the John Lee episode, the nice Irishman, the Irish accent. I think Kristie, you even know him,
Yes,
and
John's awesome.
he's talking about how, if you work abroad or from a certain location for too long, there could be tax obligations. Maybe that's 60 days in France, maybe that's 180 days in the States, if you're from outside the States, different places, right? And so I think what Airbnb is doing in terms of setting an official guideline is both good for retention and kind of framing it as a perk, but then also creating a framework, like a rules based framework that they kind of have to follow from like a tax and accounting perspective to make sure people aren't, um, like running around the world accidentally tripping tax obligations. So
Absolutely.
I think these companies are going to be forced to implement a workation policy, and in that sense, it's going to become much more common as well.
Yep. You're gonna absolutely. There's so many people in the space where th- I'm looking at it from the fun side, I think, but there's all these like really smart people like John who understands like the behind the scenes, like the corporate, the taxation, establishing permanent residency, and all of those kinds of things, right? Where I think my clients are traveling for 2 to 4 weeks at a time. That's pretty simple. You're not going to trip any tax wires or anything from
Right.
that for the most part. I guess I'm not a tax expert, so
Right.
don't take
It
this
could be
as
different things. Yeah. Yeah. Not tax advice. But some of the things John said were very interesting. It was like if you say close a deal while you're abroad, that could have implications. So it's not even about time in country. Or if you exercise options from a different country, there might be capital gains associated with that. So all these wacky things. And so maybe a public company, I'm just kind of
yeah.
spitballing here, but maybe a
Hmm.
company might say you can do workations in windows that aren't what's it called, where you set where option exercise windows, right? Because public companies have windows like a couple times a year, right? So it'll be like you can travel when you're not in those windows, things like that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think what you're going to find, I know, like I spoke with Nola Simon, for example, another person who's in that like kind of consulting for businesses, and I think it's just going to be a matter of establishing guardrails and helping companies, build those guardrails. Like you might not want your employees going too remote, like too like literally remote, right? It's
Hmm.
kind of like so. Or I know there's a 5 or 6 countries, for example, where VPNs are banned. So maybe not having those itemizing those locations would be a good idea too. So
Right. Yeah, I have a buddy. I think I told this story on the John episode, so well, we're not gonna. I'll try not to rehash too much, but um, I have a buddy who's allowed to work remote um, a good amount of the year, and they literally gave him a list of the countries that he's allowed to work remote from, and so they said, I forget the exact countries, but it's like you can do Costa Rica, but not Nicaragua. You can do Panama or Ecuador, but not Colombia. You know what I mean? So he was
yep,
literally given a list
yep.
of yes and no zones, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I have one of my clients is she works with medical record database in the US, but she
Hmm.
works remotely. And so they, same thing. They have like a list of countries that she can work from. So she just, I mean, there's a plenty to choose from really. So she just is able to travel, whenever and wherever, or whenever to one of those countries. So that seems fair. I mean, I don't think people are looking to go super extreme, right? They just want a little bit more freedom and see more of the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about data is an interesting topic. You mentioned medical healthcare data. You're already giggling because you worked for United, so I think you know where I'm going with this, which is, well, I could go a couple directions, but I think certain industries are better for working remote or outside the United States than others. And I guess remote doesn't necessarily even have to be outside the United States, but I've kind of noticed that medical data and then financial data, the companies don't want you taking a laptop with that information outside the United States.
Yep. I would say, from my experience, the people that I hear from that say that they want to take workations, but they have to do it within the U.S. are insurance, especially probably all insurance, but especially health insurance companies, and
Hmm.
then banking, which all of this I personally find kind of funny, ironically funny, because I've worked for these companies, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I've worked for these companies, taken vacations, and brought my laptop work with me because I've worked on my vacation. Nobody seemed to say anything about it, so it's kind of an interesting dilemma. I mean, I suppose that's more of like one-off things than like corporate policies, but
Hmm.
maybe that's an area they need to clarify if they don't want people working on vacation.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a major concern. I think a lot of people get flagged by their IP address, and then the IT department flags them, and an email gets sent to their boss and it says, "Hey, this guy's in Mexico," or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I just dodged that.
And I think it's going to be increasingly common in the future,
Mm-hmm.
like
Absolutely.
IP address flagging and stuff when you want to log into certain systems.
Yes. The also the first time that I was in the corporate world, and I had a plan where I was slowly like checking this out, like how this works and stuff. So I literally used my vacation time to try out remote working. So in October of 2019, for example, I went to Costa Rica. I was still in the corporate world, took a vacation to Costa Rica, but I spent part of that time going to a co-working space, logging in, seeing what worked. Look, I had a kind of a side business at the time, so I did that. Like I didn't do my necessarily my corporate job, but I tested out what it would be like. And one of the things that my partner and I found out is some websites aren't you can't access certain data and websites without a VPN. So it was like, oh, we didn't know that, and
Right, like
so
some
we knew.
personal banking websites
Yep, the
sometimes like
two-factor authentication for
uh,
banking. Yep, absolutely. So we learned some really good nuggets of that by just kind of dipping our toe in the water, um, in a workation kind of, you know,
mhm.
setting.
Kristie, I think we're scaring people.
Don't. It shouldn't be. It's not that. But these are all the concerns that people need to think about, and I think I'm trying to do my best to help put people at ease. and I can help you. I know these things. I've been doing this. I know, you need this and that and so on. I don't know the tax things, but I do know the everyday tactical things that you're going to need to make it happen.
Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. Bitrefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries, including the USA, Canada, all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. Yeah. Let's come back to tactics. Let's move on from scaring people into the fun stuff. You said you focus on the fun stuff.
Yeah, so uh it re- yeah, we started traveling in August of 2020, and I basically set out and said, well, I'm going to take 12 month. I was going to take like a 1 year sabbatical to travel, and I in the course of that I realized like more people could do this and I could help them. And so I kind of view my travels as ways of like scouting out different destinations for people. So we started in Serbia, in Belgrade. We spent a couple of months in Croatia. I've spent a lot of time in the Balkans because I like the mentality there, and it also happened to be open for U.S. passport holders during like the pandemic. But I like the mentality. They're a little bit. It's like Europe, but it's a little bit rebellious, and it has good value. So the dollar goes far there. And then when Europe gets cold, starts getting cold in the fall, then we would come back to the U.S., visit family and friends and stuff. But then we'd usually head to Mexico and spend the winters in Mexico because we like it warm. Um, and then, so we kind of just ping pong. We have in the last few years ping pong between the U.S., Mexico, and Europe. But I like to think that so when I travel, I'm making connections with local people there. I mean, I'm spending like a month there. So like this summer, we spent 3 months in Albania, and almost 4 months in
That's a long
Albania.
time in Albania.
Yeah. So we spent a little over a month and a half in Saranda, which is kind of a smaller like beach town. We
Mhm.
really like the sea. And then we spent a couple of months in Tirana. So,
In the
but
capital.
yeah. So, but it's kind of cool to go make connections, meet people, get a lay of the land, and then I can come back. And when I meet someone that wants to go to Albania, I'm your girl, right? Like I can make this happen. It's like I'm like the fitness coach for travel. It's like I hold you accountable, and we get planning, and you have homework, and
Yeah, that's cool. I actually have a American Albanian friend, and he kind of moved. He was working for a U.S. company, and he moved to Albania while he was attempting to reclaim his Albanian passport. And he was chilling in Saranda and Kisamil the whole
Samil.
time.
Yep. Yeah. Oh,
Which,
beaches there are great.
uh,
I mean, it's like Greece, but at like a fraction of the price. So I like that, and it's a little more wild. I kind of like appreciate that about places. They don't always everyone doesn't always follow the rules.
hmm. So tell me, for the audience that you're typically working with and the clients that you work with, what's like a typical client avatar looking like, or what kind of people are coming to you and that you're helping?
Yeah, the people that I can help most get traveling like ASAP are ones that can already work remotely. So, and my audience is a little bit more in the probably 35 plus age group. So, it's maybe targets a little mm, more senior in your career, maybe more of an empty nester, not really like looking to travel and party, but want to like see more of the world in I know it's a cliche term, but in a more authentic way, where
Hmm.
and meet people and talk to locals and really like soak in that culture. learn some of the language, right? Like those types of things. But so it maybe skews a little bit older, and someone that's more. It's not like the mentality isn't, oh, I'm going on a month-long vacation and I'm going to sprinkle in a little work. It's like, no, they have like important jobs that are they take seriously, and they do, and workations just let them do that. But then when they're done working, it's like, oh, I'm in Rome. I can explore Rome and Italy and different places and such.
Hmm.
So
And what are the big questions and concerns that people have?
So so I said the ones that can help really quickly are the ones that are already remote. The biggest concerns, that the obstacles that people have are people that want to do this, but they don't have a remote job, which I'm afraid I'm just not like, that's not my area of expertise. But there's definitely people out there that are. And the other one is, the other big one that I hear a lot is kids. So the people with kids, right? Because if you're targeting maybe a little bit older, um, of a avatar, they have kids. Now maybe they're maybe not empty nesters yet, their kids aren't out of the house, but uh, they might be older. So if you have like little ones, I know some of my clients will hire a nanny when they're there. They'll bring the kids with and hire a nanny. Or uh, I haven't really actually seen someone leaving a little one back home while they
Yeah, how
go
does the school
travel.
thing work? Like, how do you leave for a month? Because
Yeah.
a kid, anything between like age 5 and age 17,
Yes.
you're basically pulling them out of school unless it's the
Yes.
summer.
So that's a little bit tricky. Or I shouldn't say well, tricky is probably a good word. Um, so when you have the school age kids, that's like a whole nother realm, right? A lot of my clients will travel during school breaks. So summer is the perfect time for that. So they'll time it more with the school calendar than, so that kind of limits them a little bit, but it works, right? The other thing that some of my clients do is a lot of them homeschool their kids. So that and homeschool, and I've been learning about unschooling, which is like
Hmm.
fascinating.
Hmm.
It's like that's a whole nother topic, right?
I know your base. I know your base,
Yeah.
Kristie.
Yes. So I think, so when you homeschool your kids, then you can just travel whenever you want, right? I mean, that you're not a slave to the school system and their school breaks. But I know that's a lot for a lot of people. The other thing that I
I'm
have
sure a
heard
lot of
some
people are
people,
dabbling with that recently. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
yeah, no, I agree. The the other thing that I have heard of people doing, I'm trying to think if I actually have an example. I don't really have an example personally of someone that's done this, but um, talking with the school, like, if you had you could potentially approach the kids school and teachers and pull them out for a month or something like that, I suppose, if you had to travel during like the school year, for
Hmm.
example. That'd be a way to do it. That It's an option, right? But the
Hmm.
other the other obstacle, so kids, I just thought of this, is the third one would be, um, when so a lot of companies are now, quote, return to off calling the return to office, right? Calling employees back. And a lot of companies are doing this, what's called hybrid, where they're saying, well, you don't have to come back 5 days a week into the office to work, but you need to come in like 2 or 3 days a week. So what some people are think so what people reach out to me and ask about is, well, what do I do if I'm in a hybrid work, so I don't work like from home or remotely full time, but I can part time? And so that's where I would encourage them to have a conversation, and I have kind of like a path or steps that you can go through to like talk to your boss about, or your management, your leadership, about how maybe you can do this one off. So for the month of September, you'll work remotely full time. and you'll happen to be in Italy when you do it or whatever, right? Um, it's like basically suggest or working towards being able to go and work remotely straight instead of having, to be in the office half the time.
So you're saying like
Oh,
banking days?
well, what I was thinking was more like, well, hey, look, would you be okay? Have a conversation with your boss and say, hey, I know we're supposed to be working in the office for 3 days a week. Do you think it would be okay for the month of September that I don't go into work 3 days a week for those 4 weeks,
Hmm.
and instead work remotely full time as like maybe an ad hoc or a test pilot, like a workation test pilot kind of,
Yeah.
arrangement. So that's
Yeah, I
another
think
thing.
on the Nick Love Spain episode, you know who that is as well. He said
Yeah.
like, "Look, Spain is my happy place. Can I do the summer?" Something like that. And he kind of like baby stepped his employer
Yep.
into it.
Yep. That was exactly my plan when I was in the corporate world, and I was kind of like, well, maybe I could keep my job and then work remotely. I had a 4-step plan for how I was going to it bring this to fruition, right? And it was like, first be remote full time, then just remote in these specific places in the US, then anywhere in the US, then internationally same time zone, then anywhere in the world, right? Like, but I think having that plan with some little like milestones or baby steps is key, because not all employers are going to be super amenable to this concept. So you may have
Hmm.
to like ease them into it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend a baby step approach with a lot of things in life.
Absolutely.
And can we come back to the kids thing because I do want to hear the perspective of I assume you're a mother.
No, no, actually, I don't have kids.
Really?
I
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you, even still, I know you've been investigating this a little bit.
Yes,
Tell me
yes.
a little bit about what you've been investigating in terms of homeschooling, unschooling.
Yeah, so, actually oh, my mind was, like, completely blown. I met this lady on through Twitter who homeschool or who, she said she unschooled her kids, and I had never heard of that, and I was just like, "What?" And it was incredible, like, my mind is completely blown on this, like, uh her kids are older now, and her daughter's applying for so here's what I thought: unschooling, I thought you're basically going to raise a bunch of asshole kids is what I was thinking, and it was completely not like that at all. I mean, her daughter is applying for medical school right now, and then her son is like this like world class gamer. He travels the world doing like these competitions and stuff. It's like
Hmm.
they're great kids, and she did it from the perspective of her kids just she didn't feel her kids fit into the normal structure of the US school system. And so she needed to do something different for them, right? And so but I think it dovetails in a lot of the things that my audience might be interested in because of wanting to pursue that travel and I mean the gift of travel to your kids. I can't think of uh, a better gift to give your kids than showing them the world and opening their minds and everything, right? So that whole the homeschooling and the unschooling is like a fascinating topic to me. I've been thinking about doing actually a Twitter space on it with her because I think it would be really interesting, and I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about it, and so I think she could be really helpful. um, I've also met with a lady in Europe that hires nannies and teachers. So like if you were going to go to Europe for the summer or whatever, you could hire a nanny or a teacher to, you know, take your kids do things. I think that's a fascinating idea when you have kids and I know that there's like Boundless and there's like these uh, kind of nomadic family schools. Erin Riska is a great resource on LinkedIn and Twitter because she's a nomadic family. She's got 2 boys, but it's really a fascinating. I don't have kids. I mean, I love kids. I just never had them. Um, and I just think it's a fascinating topic because I'm disappointed by the direction of the school system in the US. So what everybody kind of gets seems to get kind of pushed into,
Hmm.
and knowing that there's like these other options for people, I think is really, really interesting. So I think it's worth exploring. And
Hmm. And so, do you find it's more empty nesters, or do you think that people with school age kids are making this happen in equal amounts?
yeah, I think that's a good question. It's kind of split. Like I know someone who traveled with her kids based on the school year, the school breaks. Um, she didn't want to mess up. There's like this mentality, right? That you're like, I don't want to like mess up my kids by homeschooling them or whatever, right? So, but anyways, so she had them in school and would travel with them whenever they could on school breaks and such, right? Especially in the summers. Well, this summer, she was she spent the summer sailing on the Mediterranean, and she brought her kids there. They spent like 6 weeks during the summer with them, and then they had to go back to the U.S. She stayed sailing, and then they went back to the U.S. with their dad because they're not together anymore. And she stayed sailing, and then I said, and then I messaged her in September, and I said, what's going on? When are you going back to the US? She's like, oh no, we're going to keep sailing. And then the kids are going to come back to Europe. And I said, well, doesn't after Labor Day, she said, their kids are coming back to Europe after Labor Day. And I thought, wait a second, shouldn't they be going back to school? So I said, what's going on? She says, yep, I decided I'm homeschooling them and we're just going to travel. So it's like, so there, that was an
Hmm.
example of someone who was in the traditional school systems, but
No,
now
I
has
get it.
made the
I
move.
honestly think people will learn more. I'll have to do a separate homeschooling, unschooling episode. Maybe you can introduce me to
Yeah.
someone. But my God, like school is literally just babysitting. Like the outcome is really not that great. Your kid will probably only still speak English. His handwriting is going to be terrible. His computer skills are going to be terrible. He's not really going to learn accounting or business. It's like, what are we even doing here? If you
Yep.
did, like, and it's like you have to commute this kid to and from the school every day. And after 4 years of commuting this kid to this like one special building, the outcome is pretty much like the same as if he just maybe did like 1 hour a day of like studying the SAT or something.
Exactly. Exactly. I think the other group of my clients that are taking workations, their kids might be, so their kids might be older and maybe not always interested in hanging out with mom and dad. So they may stay home and they stay with like maybe the other parent or with the grandparents or like a family member. So that's an option, especially for the older kids that might be a little bit more, maybe they're already in a bunch of extracurricular activities or they don't want to miss school or whatnot, right? Like, so I have clients that do that. The other faction of clients don't have kids or they are empty nesters. So they've already been through that, right? They're 45 years old and their kids are out of the house. And so now they're kind of like, now it's their turn to have fun. They're like, I always say they're like the parents of the 20 something digital nomad.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America. And Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on from unschooling, and I'm gonna make a mental note to do an episode dedicated to that. Where should we take this next? I know we wanted to talk about the mental shift, so that's probably a good transitional
Yeah.
topic. Uh, Go for it. Hit me with
Yeah.
what do we need to do in terms of a mental shift?
Yeah, like I was saying, I feel like I've been shouting off the rooftops the last few years on like more people can do this, and they just, I don't know that they don't realize it, or they think it's too hard, or there's too many obstacles, or what. But I think there's like a couple things that play, and it comes to mindset with this. So, you know, I bought into this for like over 20 years, the like definition of like success, right? I'm middle middle class, upper middle class success, right? You go to college, you get a degree, you get a good job, you climb the corporate ladder, you get a mortgage, you get a big house, you get some foreign cars, some nice car, you know, you can kind of see where this is all headed. And
Hmm.
that, if you follow that script, you're kind of stuck. You don't really have freedom. You're sort of, I mean, you're you have a mortgage. You can't just quit your job. You have bills to pay. You know all that. So um, there's this concept of lifestyle design that I think is really interesting, and it's like basically thinking differently. And so there's like this mindset shift that has to happen where you're kind of doing something against the grain, and you're basically thinking a little bit differently than maybe what you were taught to do, and that's traveling more, having, maybe positioning your life so that you can travel more. Maybe you don't have like the biggest house you can possibly afford, so that you have more money to travel more. Or there's just a lot of like ways, philosophically, ways that you might think differently. And like I know it's a popular term is like lifestyle design. So
Hmm.
maybe in my mind, I would think if I was like in the corporate world and I could work remotely, I and I don't think workations are a substitute for vacation. I just want to say that. Like, I think disconnecting from work is really important. So, but what if you imagine your life in 1 year? Look at the one calendar year, and oh, here's an example. One of my clients, she took one vacation every year. That's the only travel she ever did for the longest time. She's uh, been in the working world like almost 30 years now.
Hmm.
Um, one vacation with her family. She always goes to Mexico, whatever. We started working together. She's in the first year of us working together. She joined one of our workations, our group workations, um, in Mexico, Croatia, and Belize. So I mean, the Belize trip might have tripped past her 1 year mark, but think so. She took 2 month long workations in addition to her 1 week vacation. So she went from traveling 1 week a year to uh, Cancun or Playa del Carmen or Tulum. So mm, that's not even like, that's like vacation travel, right? Like that's not even really like learning that much about culture or something, or it's not as maybe an authentic of an experience as if you had spent a month living in Mexico somewhere, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's different
So
when you're doing groceries and you can,
yes,
you
exactly.
can go to the gym.
Exactly. So she went from like five 7 days of vacation of travel a year to 67, because she took 2 1 month long vacations in addition to her, right? So she went from 7 days to 67 days a year. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? Like a month in Mexico, we went to Merida and Cholem, a little beach town near there,
Hmm.
and then Croatia, Dubrovnik, Split. I mean, just, I think that's incredible how you can, and I just think that it it's rethinking how you do things. And so that's that mindset shift. The other mindset shift thing I think you make is, as you mentioned with grocery shopping and stuff like that, is like when you take a workation, it's not a vacation. It's, you have to think differently about like how you travel. So you don't have to like cram all of these things into 1 week that you're going to be there, right? You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah, what I like about 1 month, and I've done a couple tweets saying, 1 month is the sweet spot. A lot of people say 2, 3 months, but I think 1 month is good, is because you can work from Monday to Friday, super normal, get stuff done in the Airbnb or whatever. And then you have Saturday and Sunday to do day trips, to, go hiking, to go to the famous museum, to do whatever. And by the end of a month, you've had, 20 some odd working days where you squeeze in some activities as well.
mhm.
And, 7 or 8 full days off
Uh-huh.
where you can do those tasks or those like fun activities that kind of require a full day. and
Absolutely.
and I think it's like a great balance. And after a month, you'll get to know a city super well, while having been productive the whole time.
Yep. I always think 4 weeks of workation equals 1 week of vacation when it comes to the fun stuff.
Yeah, that's
So
the math.
that's
Like
like
it's
kind of my
just,
rule of
3 4
thumb.
weekends, Saturday and Sunday, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I I just think you're for so many there's so many reasons why doing those getting those fun spending a month doing those fun things is so different than if you're just on vacation and just
Here's a
grinding them
frame
out.
for you that you could use. Let me think about how this works. It's like, do you want to spend your 500th weekend in Minnesota, or do you want to spend your weekend, in Cairo or
Yeah,
Tokyo or
right.
or Dubrovnik, right?
Yeah.
Spend
Yeah.
3 weekends, and it's basically like, we're doing our normal work during the week. Everything's pretty much the same. Obviously, you can go out to dinner by the ocean and like stuff's amazing, but yeah, it's like I think you've already
Mhm.
had enough weekends in Minnesota.
Yeah. Like one of my clients said, uh, was in Budapest and said, I woke up, made some coffee, did a little bit of work until lunchtime, and then I like stepped outside for lunch and I was in Budapest. It's just like you're already there, you
Yep,
know? And the cool thing, the other thing that I really like about Europe, living living in Europe and working like US hours is the time zone. I love the time zone difference cuz
agreed.
they're 6 hours ahead. You can like wake up without an alarm clock. I think that's like my favorite. I say that all the time. Um, enjoy the morning and the early afternoons, hiking, going to the beach, anything, right? You get to enjoy like the best part of the day. And then 3 o'clock rolls around, and then it's like, okay, time to work. And then work till, you know, through dinner or something, or stop for dinner and work a little bit after. And then you go to bed and, work days aren't that bad. It's actually harder for me when I return to the US and Mexico in the same time zone because it's like, you mean I have to like set my alarm to like get up and get working right away? I can't just slowly, it's very different.
Hmm. Tell me about the group trips, because I think that's appealing to people. They might not want to just do it solo, or they might see the appeal of, yeah, traveling as
Yeah.
a group.
Yeah. So I have this community of people, and that's where a lot of these group trips have all started. And one common theme or thing that I hear is that there's a lot of people out there that uh, want to travel more, but they don't want to travel alone. So that's the benefit of the group trip, right? And when you're maybe um, in your 40s or 50s, you're you don't want to you maybe don't want to hang out with the 20 somethings that are partying and such all the time, but you're not interested in the bus tours that like my parents go on for the retirees and stuff, right? And that might be fine, but they also don't specifically set time for working. So with our group trips, that's where we plan, basically like at a really high level, where we don't really plan much Monday through Friday, except work, and then we might sprinkle in some things, on the fly. But Saturdays and Sundays are really the days where then that's where, like you said, you take those like full day trips, and that's when you can really do some big things. Like we did a 1 month workcation in Croatia, which is amazing. And I love Croatia. You probably are annoyed with me how much I talk about Croatia, but I love it there. So we did a workation there, and we spent 2 weeks near Dubrovnik. And on the weekends, and well, there was a holiday because there was Labor Day. Um, we went, I mean, you could go, we did a day trip to Kotor in Montenegro. We did a day trip to Mostar in Bosnia. We did a day trip to Trebinje, this place that has like amazing wine in Bosnia. We did a day trip to Korčula, which is an island in Croatia. Then we went up to near Split, and we took a day trip to Plitvice Lakes National Park, and a day trip to Primošten, and a day trip to Krka National Park, right? Like we toured Diocletian's Palace in Split, right? There's just so many things that you could do when you're not working, and there's so many people out there that they want, like, work is important to them, so they don't want to go on a, they need to know and have confidence that they're going to be in an environment where they can get their work, they can do their work well, and get everything
Hmm.
done that they need to get done. And then when they're not working, it's go time for the fun.
Yeah, and you help plan all these activities?
Yes, yeah. So that's kind of for this, for like this an example, the group trip. Um, just create the calendar, or organize like the drives and the tours and all of that stuff. So that's what I did for this group trip. But then I also do that workation planning for individuals. So there might be like a couple, or a couple with a little, with a family or something like that, and they might want like their own kind of custom, so they want someone to help them find the flights. They don't have the time, they don't have maybe the expertise on how to find the best flights, how to find the best accommodations, what
Hmm.
are the local connections for the best experiences, and so on.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of logistical elements. When I have buddies that come visit me that are not experienced travelers and I have to figure out everything for them, I'm like, God damn, I should be getting paid.
Exactly, it's kind of like a next level travel agent almost, right? Like everybody knows how to use Expedia and Google Flights and all of that stuff, but there's definitely a learning curve to it, and a lot of people just aren't interested in it.
Hmm. We're making this up on the fly, but uh, can people mention My Latin Life and get a little discount, something like that?
Yeah,
This is not
absolutely,
pre-planned, but you got some.
absolutely. Can I say no? Just kidding. Of course, yeah, I'd happy to reach out to anybody, and I I'll give them a good discount.
Okay, guys, you're gonna get
That'd
treated
be
nice
awesome.
if you
Yeah.
mention My Latin Life when you
Yes.
book your workation with Kristie. And is it just group trips, or are you also doing kind of like custom concierge stuff?
Yes, I can do. So I'll do the you can like, you get better numbers with the group trips, but I also do one-on-one. So like a family, a couple. I've done trips for small groups of friends. So I would like to get into uh, teams, like at work, like work teams. I think would be a really interesting element. In fact, I spent a week. I In my travels, I had met a sailor, a skipper, and he did. You could charter a sailing trip, and he claimed it was like digital nomad focus, and I was like, yeah, right, but I'll try it. Oh my gosh, we did a sailing trip in the Adriatic Sea around Croatia, and it was phenomenal. And we could work, and it was amazing. And my significant other was like, he's a former software engineer, and so he's got that kind of like team development, experience. He's like, this a trip like this would be perfect for like a group of developers to come together on a project and just like knock something out in a week, and you know in an amazing location. And so the group, a custom group trip for like teams and coworkers is the area I'd like to go into next, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. especially as these companies, a lot of these companies maybe stay remote. They want to periodically come together in person as a team. And I think workations would be a great way for them to do that.
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amounts so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. I had a random thought, which is would companies allow you to do group trips with people from a competing company? Obviously, very, very difficult to enforce, but kind of an interesting thought, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm an equal opportunity planner. But
It's
yeah,
like it's like okay, if we got someone from Facebook here and
yeah.
someone from Twitter here, we got to put them on different floors.
If Zuckerberg contacts me and Musk contacts me, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
We'll put them on other sides of the dinner table.
Oh, that would be a nice problem to have. I would actually love that if these big time players really embodied this concept. I think that'd be amazing.
I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna for just because that's where things are going.
I think so too. I mean, I don't know. Like Elon has said some really interesting things about return to office and such, right? That has raised a
Uh,
lot of
yeah, you definitely put a what's it called, a wrench in the wheel a little
yeah.
bit. But there's so many. Tell me more about like interesting things that you're seeing because I see some stuff, startups and whatever innovating around this, but I don't see all of them. Like for example, there might be companies that buy or rent, like they rent a co-living house or they rent an apartment somewhere cool,
Yep.
and they rent it and they say like, hey, you're also allowed to go work at the Santa Monica Surf House, and so it's like they kind of set up like a hub and spoke model.
Yep. Yep. I think I in my mind I think what comes to mind is like Selena, for example.
Hmm.
That's like a great place for people to go. Um, but uh, my dream, what where I would this is my dream, right? If we were like dreaming, would be so one of the things that my partner and I have are looking out for is part of this travel too is scoping out places that we personally want to live, right? So we would like to have. I don't think we're ever going to be only living in the U.S. Like you know, we might want a place in the U.S. for to come back to when we're visiting family and friends and such. But we would want like we call them bounce pads amongst like my friends and stuff, where it's like
Hmm.
we want to be able to bounce to Thailand and maybe Albania and maybe Buenos Aires and maybe a place in Mexico or whatever, right? Well, in the part of that, I would love to buy like a multi-unit place where maybe we kind of live in one of them, but we could rent out the others for other people that are like us, that want to know they can be confident in knowing they can go to these places and they can hit the ground running when it comes to work. There's no issues with internet. There's good workspaces. Man, you'll have a dual monitor. We'll have a big ergonomic keyboard for you, a comfortable chair. The beds are going to be like comfortable. It's how I would want to live, right? So I see a lot. We actually kind of jokingly, semi-jokingly, call it like a digital nomad timeshare, and that's kind of what some of
Yeah.
these people are doing, right? But
Orca Pass, Dave and Sood. You're
yes, Exactly. When I met him, I was just like on the edge of my seat, like, yes, yes, yes. This is what, we're kind of shoehorning in this kind of midterm travel. That's what I would call like a maybe a 1-2 month stay places. Um,
Hmm.
we're kind of using these, like he has said, the Airbnb, for example, is like a vacation platform. It's like a accommodations for vacations, but we're sort of like shoehorning in our needs and figuring out workarounds to make it work for us. Where what he's building is making it, way easier. The other thing,
You guys
uh,
met in person?
no, just we had a Zoom call back when
Okay,
I was
okay.
in Saranda actually this summer, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, cool. This is
Um,
a previous podcast guest for the
yeah,
listeners, Dave and Sood. You could check it out, episode 103, something like that. You can get, but yeah,
that was a
check that
great
one out.
great episode. Love what
Mhm.
he's doing there. Um, the one thing that I will say is there's a company called Nomad Stays. Uh, Mark and Linda Phillips have built this, like, it's almost like Airbnb but for digital nomads. Uh, it's really cool. So I think it's like really an interesting, and they also have just added like a filter criteria for workcation and one for executive remote workers. So if you're like, look, Vance, I'm not staying in a hostel. Like that's just not how we travel. And that's not a good or a bad thing. That's just we're not interested in traveling that way. So you have options if you want like full, apartments or something, So you have what's cool about nomad stays is that they have while they have hostels and those types of co-living spaces, they also have like private accommodations and so on. So that's like a cool thing for maybe someone that's listening to check out, because I think they're doing really cool things too. And they, you know, it's strongly vetted for remote workers. So I think that's what's cool about that too.
Mhm. Yeah, Sam Miller. I'm not sure if you've connected with him. He was like episode 4 of the podcast. He's really dedicated himself to building what he calls lifestyle investments in Medellin and in the Riviera Maya, where you buy a property that you can live in or that you might want to live in maybe 1 month a year. And then the rest of the time when you're not there, you can rent it out. So it's like somewhere you'd actually want to live and spend some time kind of as a plan B or a second
Yeah.
base. Um,
Yeah.
but then it has an ROI as well.
My a good friend of mine a couple years ago now bought a condo in Medellin, and it's such a cool concept that needs to like be all over the world. He bought a condo and he can live in it whenever so they rent it out, like the management team of the facility. I don't know if this is the same thing that Sam is doing, but um, the management company will market it and rent them out. But my friend that owns a unit will always have a place to stay. It might not be his specific unit if his is already like rented out, but um, uh, he'll always have a place to stay when he's there, and then he gets the returns. I mean, he's getting like 1% a month or something like that. It's like pretty good cap rate, so it's kind of interesting. I'd like to see more places do stuff like that where you have like a management company in there running it, and so you
Hmm.
could earn some return that maybe offsets the cost.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the future of workations, anything we didn't mention in terms of like what you think the future of this concept and uh yeah, the future of this concept is going to look like?
Yeah, I think two things. I think one of the things that we spend so much time on because we slow travel, so we spend more time in places, is the accommodations, is finding the accommodations. So like what David is doing at Orca is really cool. What Nomad Stays is doing to help the remote worker make it easier for people like us to travel and work remotely and have confidence that the place is going to be comfortable for living and working. I think the accommodation piece, you're going to see a lot more of those types of um, platforms or services coming to fruition in the future. And I also think with workations, it's going to be a big there's going to be a big push in the amongst companies and employers to be encouraging or offering, or at least not being a roadblock to letting the employees explore this concept of workations.
Awesome. And something I wanted to mention at the beginning of the episode, but didn't want to mess with the flow. Indulge me about Twitter for a second and just what you like about it, what you like about my amazing account, etc.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I started my account back in like 2009 or something like that. And I never was like that interested in it. To be honest, like when I was in the corporate world, all the social media stuff to me was just like, I would call it like kids stuff. And so, which is now that I'm outside and in it, it's like, oh, this is like tough. Like this is the real deal. So anyways, I had an account for a long time. I never used it. And then um, I met some people that were using it, and it was a great platform to like share your message, right? I have like this person, I've become this, mission of helping people travel more. And I think these business people can travel more, right? Like helping people. So I was, it was interesting because I wasn't super interested in it until I met these people, which happened to also be around somewhat around the time that Elon Musk bought it. And it was like, I basically had like FOMO, and it was like, well, I have to be on Twitter. I don't want to miss out in case this whatever happens that with Elon taking it over. I was like, well, I don't want
Hmm.
to miss out on something big on what's coming. And now I over the last 3 years, freedom has become very, very important to me. And so I feel like, I don't know, there seems to be the changing of the guard there has made freedom of speech better. So I appreciate that about Twitter a lot. So that drew me in more because it
Hmm.
was like, you know, that element of freedom. And then I see a lot of that freedom type of content that you share and thoughts that you're sharing, and that resonates with me, and thinking differently, and thinking not that like script that our society tells people that you need to follow, but instead making charting your own path. Like, if it is go to college, get a corporate job, buy a big house, have a couple cars, have a golf club membership, whatever, that's great. If that's what you really want, no shame in that, right? But make sure what you're doing is what you want to be doing. And if that's not what you want to be doing, there's other options.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that nomads and expats are kind of bums that, wouldn't be able to make it, quote unquote, back home. And I think that that perception is changing a lot. I had a quote, or I had a tweet recently where I said, the goal is to be traditionally successful, own real estate, make a lot of money, prestige, whatever, but to also live an interesting life and to not sacrifice 30 years living in a cold, depressing city for that success, and to find a balance.
100%. Yep. That's it. I mean, and that, I mean, I could talk all day on this, sorry, but it's like the whole concept of working like a corporate career and pinning your dreams on when you retire. I did it, and it blows my mind. And I'm so lucky that my mind changed and I think about things differently, cuz man, how do you spend 35 years working, being miserable, hoping that you have good health and a life and the financial whatever situation to like travel or whatever your dreams are, right? It's a bad strategy.
Yeah, I think it's just not interesting enough. It's like you only have one life. It's like you see a lot of successful hedge fund managers or something. It's like born in New York, went to NYU, got a job at the Bank of New York. And it's
Yep.
like, what do is
Yep.
you don't want to
That,
do anything, you
yep.
know?
That that like Rolex watch and that, 5 BMWs or whatever.
Have it. You
Okay.
can. Well, what's cool about where we're at
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the 2023s is that you can still you can work online and still make
Yep.
money to get a Rolex, still get a BMW, whatever,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you can do both
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
live a cool life. I it just bewilders me when I meet when I speak to my uncles or people that are kind of in the second half of life, and it's like, really, you've never seen the pyramids, you've never been to Tokyo, you've never been to Machu Picchu, whatever it is, right? It's like, come on, like
Yeah.
these days it's a
Absolutely.
short flight away.
It's never been easier to travel.
It's never
It's
been
never been
easier.
easier to work remote from wherever you want. I mean, the reality is, if you really want this, find a different, and you can't, like, your boss won't let you or whatever, find a different job, or create a plan to try and change their mind, right? Like, you just got to go after what you want, I think is the big thing there.
I like it. Any final message that you want to share with the audience?
No, I think I'm going to start making them cry again. It's just like the time is now, really. I mean, as all of these, like, as this whole concept of the business and my community and the things that I do have all kind of culminated together, it's like you can't afford to put this stuff off. And no matter, I mean, travel is just my thing, right? And it's a lot of people's thing, but it's not the only thing. Like, people have dreams of doing other stuff, right? And that's cool. But whatever your dreams are, just, it's on you to make it happen. And, it's cliche, but tomorrow isn't promised to anybody. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to start making plans today to make it happen as soon as possible.
I concur. So,
Yeah.
Kristie, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. I have a website. It's executiveremoteworker.com, and you can contact me through there. I'm on Twitter, Kristie DS. It's KRISTIEDS. And then I'm also, I'm on LinkedIn, Kristie Sullivan. I'm not sure the URL on that one, but you can find me, Kristie Sullivan. And I just am dipping my toe in the water in Instagram now. So
Mm.
apparently that's where all the travelers are. So pretty pictures and stuff. And over the last 3 years of full-time travel, I've got a lot of nice little pictures to share. So it'll be cool to try and see what kind of people I meet there, and audience and such, right? So I'm on Instagram at Kristie DS, or email me at Kristie@executiveremoteworker.com.
Great. And for the audience, I encourage you to send Kristie a message and say, I listened to your podcast on My Latin Life. It was incredible. And I want my
Yes.
discount on my next
Yes.
workation.
I will get you on a workation. You'll never forget. Workations, I think, are just completely Dan from Noma Collective. I heard him on a podcast.
Yep, he was on mine. He was on our
Maybe it was
podcast.
yours, actually.
Yep.
And he was talking about how he sees in week one, because they do like 3-week workations, approximately 3 weeks. And he was saying in week one, people are coming in, they're all like kind of trying to get the lay of the land and stuff. Week two, they're kind of getting settled in and figuring out the flow of work and exploring and such. And then by week three, they're sitting there like, wow, I got to do this more. Like, how can I make this happen more often? So I think you'll find that once you have like the personal experience with this, your life is forever changed. So I definitely look forward to hearing from everybody. That would be amazing. I would love it.
Sweet. Again, this has been another episode of My Latin Life podcast. My guest, again, is Kristie, the travel coach, workation planner, executiveremoteworker.com. Thanks again, Kristie, for your time.
Thank you so much. Great having a chat with you.